Hey folks, and welcome to my thoughts on a book. And today's book is Return to Foreverware. This is the first book in the Eerie, Indiana series by Mike Ford. There will be spoilers. Alright, so a few things about the series before I get into the story. So, originally, Eerie, Indiana is a TV show. It was filmed in the 90s, and there was a show about a young boy who moves with his family to a town called Eerie, Indiana, and all the weird things that are happening there, and he and his new friend Simon document. Now, the books, they aren't, like a continuation of the show. Also, surprisingly, that it's not based on the books. Usually it's based on books, but no. Now, these books, what they are, they're just extra cases in the Eerie, Indiana universe. There's 19 episodes of Eerie, Indiana, and these books they're like new cases in the universe, new cases that they didn't air in the show. The books were written later, so that's kind of some information about that. All right, now let's get into the story. All right, so in the first one, Marshall and Simon, they need to look for a job. Marshall's dad tells him that he needs to, find a summer job. Marshall obviously doesn't really want to, but when his dad suggests that, maybe he'll come work with him, Marshall doesn't want to, come anywhere near the workplace where his dad works. Because for some reason, every time his dad can't really remember what he did during the workday. That every time he just can't remember that. And so he tells him he will look, and then Simon arrives, and apparently Simon's dad and Marshall's dad talked, and now Simon also has to get a job. So they look in the newspaper for the ads, and they find this weird ad that requires a young boy to come do sort of a weird job. So both of them go, and they meet Mrs. Stewart and Mr. Stewart. Now Mrs. Stewart tells them that the job, they need to help clean the attic. And of course, a lot of weird things are about this whole thing. So they start working for her, and everything's weird in their house. It seems like everything is stuck in the 70s, including the Stewarts themselves. So as they start cleaning the attic, they find out that they find out a picture of a young boy, and they picture of a young boy who turns out to be the steward's son. And more weirdness ensues. It seems that Mrs. Stewart, from the beginning even, takes a very strong interest in Simon. After the first day when they return home, they see that Simon looks a lot like the boy in the picture. And so they continued to go to the Stewart's house to also investigate further as they clean the attic until on the third day, Marshall is going to be late to the house. Simon tells him he'll go without him. And when Marshall arrives there after a dentist appointment, whoop, Simon is not there, and Mrs. Stewart doesn't want to let him in. That's when he learns that. That's when he learns that they kidnapped him. Because he goes around the house and he sees Simon's bike there. So that night he sneaks in and tries to find out where Simon's located in the house. And that's when he learns what's going on. So Foreverware, I don't remember what episode that was, but it was these containers that can preserve anything for years. And in the episode that this was shown, there was this mother. She was selling these things, and Marshall's mom decided to buy a few, and they were holding meetings also in her house, and they were all singing an eerie and creepy song. And Marshall meets this woman's boys. She has twin boys. Now, they don't talk to him at all, but they do leave him a note, and it says to look in a certain yearbook. Now, when he looks, he sees their pictures from like 30 years ago. And that night, he and Simon, they sneak into their house, and they see that the mom puts the boys in one of these containers, but human-sized containers, and she puts herself in as well. They get the boys out, and the boys tell them that their father is the one who worked on this. They worked on making these things. Now, I don't remember what happened to the dad. I think he either died or disappeared or something like that. Then the boys basically have been reliving the same almost day, you could say, since then, because their mother didn't want them to age. She wanted everything to stay as it is, more or less. So they go in. The boys went into the mom's room. They opened her container, and the next day, when Marshall and Simon returned to that house, they saw that now the boys, Bert and Ernie, they were now almost 40 years old, and their mom was an old lady, and they were looking to sell the house. Now, with these containers, the thing is, you have to sleep in them 8 hours, about that, and you have to go to be in them after a certain hour, or else they don't work. So that's connected to that episode, because Marshall does find Simon in such a container. The stewards want him to replace their dead son. So while Marshall is there, they do catch them before he manages to escape with Simon, but they manage to get Marshall to stay by Simon saying, he really wants him to be there. The stewards, the brains got screwed completely, so they call Simon Rodney. Some weird shit, basically. So the next day, while they're all playing hide and seek, and they have Simon a birthday, Marshall runs to Bert and Ernie. Apparently, they become teachers since then, because they're the only ones that they dealt with these Foreverware dishes and everything. They can help him. So apparently, Mrs. Stewart and their mom they were rivals in selling this stuff. And the Stewart's real son, Rodney, had a heart condition. And his parents become extremely overprotective. And they kept him in these containers. In his container, so he would not die. But then one Christmas, he really wanted to see Santa. And his parents didn't properly close the lid. He got out and he died, unfortunately. So the twins have a plan. They tell Marshall he has to go back, or else who knows what the stewards might do. He crawls in through the dog door. They also kept the dog. They bought their son a dog back then. They also kept him in a container. And while they're sitting, Mrs. Stewart wonders where the dog is. And then she sees the mud, and they realize that Marshall has been sneaking out. They take Simon to Rodney's room, and Mrs. Stewart grabs Marshall and forces him to go down to the cellar, where apparently they have other containers, but ones that freeze you completely. And they're full of other boys that over the years these stewards have been kidnapping and trying to force them to be their son. And it looks like every boy has refused. So they would then lock him up in ice containers. Even in the beginning, it looks like the husband is, in the beginning of the story more, that he's becoming eerie of doing this every time. I can understand him. Anyway, Marshall manages not to go into a sleep in these frozen containers. He starts to eventually rock back and forth in his, and it falls to the ground. It breaks, and he's out of there. He wakes up on the floor, Then he runs upstairs quietly while avoiding the stewards. They're reliving Rodney's birthday, and then they want to relive Christmas, but this time with Rodney, in this case Simon, waking up alive. But luckily, Bert and Ernie arrive more or less on time and save them. The plan is to prevent the stewards from going into the containers after midnight, which then, if they manage to, they'll just stay young again. They prevent them from going in, and the stewards age. After midnight hits, they age to the age they're supposed to be in. And the boy and Simon and Marshall, together with one of the twins, they get the other boys out of the frozen containers. The other boys, they're from different years, so some of them, it's been like 2 decades since they've been lost. So those boys are gonna go with the twins. The twins, apparently they've been trying some experimental things, because with these frozen containers, if you just don't go in, you revert back to your original age. But they don't know what it'll be with these frozen ones, and it might be that those boys will stay their young ages forever. But Bert and Ernie tell them that they have some experimental things a microwave that could get them to their proper age. So they go with them. They also take the dog, Spike, with them. They leave the stewards there. Marshall and Simon return to Marshall's house. Simon's parents have left for a week. And, his family is oblivious. Marshall left them a note that they're going camping, but they don't particularly ponder where the boys have been. Oh, and then towards the end, apparently the next morning, Mrs. Stewart actually came over, and she gave a parcel for Marshall and Simon. In the parcel, there's the fruitcake that she made, and the photo of Simon that she took. And she also leaves them a note to Simon and Marshall, happy holidays. Apparently, she told Marshall's mom that they're going to live with their son or find their son. I think that, maybe after all these decades of them reliving the same thing again and again, maybe finally Marshall, stopping all of this with Simon, maybe it helped the Stewarts as well. Perhaps they finally accepted that their son had died. Or who knows? I'd like to think there was a bit of an optimistic ending. And a weird one. So yeah, this was great. I really enjoyed reading this. It's like reading Animorphs. It's enjoyable, it's understandable. You don't need to think too much. Also, there's a lot of all sorts of characters that in the Eerie, Indiana universe. For instance, Edgar Allan Poe works in the library, and Elvis lives there, and Marilyn Monroe, and some houses. There's a lot of really cool and, eerie shit in this one. So it was great. It's a lot of fun. Also, it's fun, everyone in the town is oblivious to all of this. It seems, except Simon and Marshall. And they have this whole locker where they keep evidence. It's great. It's the type of stuff I love. Alright, so I've been blittering on long enough, I think. Yeah, so this was great. So it's great, 4 stars. I will definitely get more books from this series. I don't know if you have to read them in order. I will. I have a problem with that. I have to read them in the order. But yeah, it looks like it's just more cases in the universe. So that's cool. More interesting stuff to read. Alright, so that is it, folks. Let me know if you've ever heard of Eerie, Indiana. If you ever read the books. If you watched the show. And, if you like eerie and creepy stories, I would recommend giving this a try. You don't really have to watch the show before this. There's enough there that you can understand the story, and you don't really need much. All right, so that is it. Till next time. Bye.